Hey, wait, it's my turn, isn't it?
I was going to say, I looked at the gong stats and a little quicker on the banter. Anyway, go ahead. I'm just giving you shit. Go ahead. Keep that in there. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Sales Unscripted podcast. I am one of your hosts, Margaret Henney.
I'm the quiet host, Brian Neal.
Lies. You're the talkative one. We all know it. And we are joined with our friend Matt here from Philo. So
hello.
We are back for episode 2,
Yeah.
talking about buyer enablement and reducing friction within the sales process. We're not going to get right into it. That's not how we vibe here, right? Like, I was about to be like, let's start solving the problem, but...
I did say, so I texted you, I was at my anniversary dinner. It was my 4th anniversary.
Oh, hey, happy anniversary.
Yep. You know what I did?
Huh.
So there's a karaoke bar in the north side of Indianapolis called Tilly's. It's in a strip mall. And it's more of a late night type of place. We went to Late Harvest. It's a really great Chef
Great
Ryan,
spot.
Great place.
Love
The
it.
bar at Late Harvest is really great. And we live right by Tilly's. I'm like, let's go to Tilly's.
Yeah.
And I love karaoke. But I sang a song for my wife for her anniversary.
Let me guess.
Oh, that'd be good.
I don't know if I know the song, but I'm going to guess it was a Prince song.
No, it wasn't a Prince. I would never, ever, ever.
What? You
ever,
love Prince?
Is exactly why I would never sing Prince in front of humans. Ever,
What? 'Cause
Ever would I sing?
you
Prince.
just don't want to be
If we were playing
compared.
piano at home. I would do it, but everybody be singing.
Okay.
But karaoke, no.
Okay, all right. What'd you sing?
I'll give you a hint. It's a male singer, popular mostly in the 70s, and still has a residence show in Vegas.
Hang on.
Gotcha. You can get this. That was a great. Here's another. Here's
Bruce
obscure,
Springsteen?
No,
I
he
don't
doesn't
know.
have a residence in
I
Vegas.
don't know.
Barry Manilow.
Oh, you
Come
say
on. Can't smile without you. You kidding me? You talk about the whole bar like, yeah, can't smile without you. That was
That's
fun.
so
Wasn't
funny.
it fun?
I always think about Austin Powers when I think about Barry Manilow because that's the first time I saw Barry Manilow. It was on the first Austin Powers movie. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Was it Barry Manilow?
Yes, it totally was.
It was
it was Burt
Bacharach.
Burt
Bacharach.
Bacharach. I was thinking, I was like, I don't think
It's
that's the
not-
same guy.
It's not the same guy.
Oh, my bad.
But it's okay to view them as the same. human
Sorry,
being.
Bear.
Or
They're both talented.
Are they the same guy?
They could.
Yeah, I'm going to look this up because I could have sworn it was at least
It
in
was
Austin
not.
Powers 2.
I think you've got a couple of really familiar movie watchers with me and Matt that know that was Burt Bacharach. We're in the exact scene. We know he's in the
Listen,
back of
I'm
the
looking
truck,
up.
right? Anyway,
I will say you landed that plane really, really well because I thought you were like, so I had an anniversary dinner and there's this karaoke bar and I'm like, you did not take her to a
good.
karaoke bar.
Yeah,
You're not gonna make
exactly.
it to the 5th. Like you
No,
need to get
for sure.
and then okay, dinner first and then way to land the
singing a
plane.
song.
Good
That
job.
was okay. You gotta,
Good
gotta
recovery.
save it somewhere. So we're talking about buyer friction being easy to buy. We have this beautiful, wonderful idea called buyer enablement that Matt talked to us about in the first episode. So in this episode, we want to get into solutions. So if you're listening to this and you might be a part of the problem, and again, it's not your fault, but
Right.
you're like, gosh, I'm doing these things. What can I do to change that? And we want to talk both to sales leadership, to owners and founders, and to the sales teams, I think. And so I'd love to hear, Matt, your take to start us off on what are some things people can do when they're thinking about reducing friction in the buying process.
Yeah, I mean, to start with the simplest thing is we talked a little bit about this in the last episode is just putting yourself in your buyer's shoes will be shocking, right? It doesn't mean you even have to go through the entire process. Just imagine what it's like for them on the other side of it and the problem that they're trying to solve can be shocking. So that even just doing that for 10 or 15 minutes gets you started in that direction. And then obviously we're strong believers that there should be an entire discipline of people who wake up every morning, go to bed every night obsessing about this, thinking about it from the buyer's perspective. What jobs are they trying to get done? And how are you helping enable them to get through those jobs and solve those jobs? We think of it in 7 jobs, and we can get into this in a second. And Gartner has their way of looking at it too. So we kind of stole a little bit from them and made some tweaks. They've done some really good thinking about it. But just putting yourself in your buyer's shoes. What problem are they trying to solve? What jobs do they need to get done to solve that problem? And then how are you either helping them or getting in their way?
Love it.
I'm going to piggyback on that and just give people a little pro tip because in the last one, you gave the suggestion or you were like a story about when you were in the buyer's shoes. So instead of maybe even the best way to do this is not even thinking about necessarily your product right away. Just think about a personal story yourself when you were trying to buy something and you were frustrated about it, right? That's the easiest way to get in their shoes. And then you can take it a step further and apply that to your business, your product.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What problem have you tried to solve? Were you the person who could solve it? Could you buy something? If not, how did you get support?
Yes.
How did you articulate that? How did you get consensus internally? Who did you
Yes.
talk to? What was the process look like? Just take yourself through that path and you start to see, I mean, you talked about trying to get a question answered from a credit card company. Like everybody gets frustrated going through this, and they don't sit back and think about how does that relate to what I do every day.
100%. And I'm so I'll go a little old man on you. So the whole reason YouTube TV, not the whole, a huge reason YouTube TV exists is because AT&T sucks so badly. I firmly believe that DirecTV.
100%.
And they don't think that's the problem, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
If AT&T had this beautiful customer experience all the time, even if the stuff breaks every once in a while, because YouTube TV can glitch, but YouTube TV I just trust, and and there's not a human to talk to at YouTube TV.
Yeah, that's
Nobody.
true. Yeah.
You're not going to try to call the help center at YouTube TV.
That's true.
Yeah. But it's true, isn't it? Because I guess it's so easy, isn't it? I can watch it on all my devices. It mostly works all the time, just like AT&T did. And I think some companies have their head in the sand with this topic, this issue. They don't realize how much they're in the way.
Well, and checking your ego. You said this on the last episode too. It's always a good thing to do, right? Because otherwise we put up our defenses and we think, well, gosh, we've spent so much time thinking about sales enablement and our processes, and we put a lot of effort into it, and that's okay. But just like check that ego for just a second and think about, because ultimately what's good for your buyer is good for you, right?
That's exactly right.
Yes.
I mean, if you can, there's one way to say, oh man, these people aren't qualified, right? And there's another thing, okay, so what are they trying to do? And then how do we help them understand that it isn't us as fast as possible, right?
Yes.
Like, it's just a different way of looking at the same thing. Man, I have to qualify this person so I don't waste my time, versus how do I help them get towards the right direction as fast as possible, even if that isn't me,
That's
right?
Yeah,
greatest
love
thing.
that.
I love that. It's how do I unqualify them? And so, no, I don't know. And I train these people for a living. And we teach the mentality you're talking about. We call it intention. What's our intention? Our intention is do what's right to help them, regardless if it includes us or not. And as much as we teach it, and our clients are pretty good, and we only work with about 100 companies, so there's a billion others that are doing it the other way. Like, try to get them. They're trying to get them all. And when you try to get them, you get in the way of the good ones too. Trying to get them right.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And instead, if you just put yourself in their shoes, right, then the problems that they need to solve, and this is where I'm stealing a bit of Gardner's language, the jobs that they need to do become really, really clear, right? And we think about it. We in our view, there's 7 of them.
Yes.
You have to identify, first of all, the problem. How do you identify and articulate what problem you're trying to solve, right? So that's one. Second is, what are the solutions? How do you identify and understand what potential solutions exist out there? Those could be services, those could be software, those could be hardware, those could be internal projects, but what are the potential solutions to your problem? How do you select then which one of those is right for you? So how do you get the information you need to be able to select which one is your desired one? You need to have some level of validation. So they need some level of validation. They could say, yeah, this is my right solution, but my level of confidence is only 10%. They're not going to move forward with you. So they need to have some level of validation that something can do what they think they can do. They need to be able to get the resources to be able to do it. That could be getting budget if they're buying something. That could be getting people on board. That could be gathering a project group internally. That could be gathering consensus, but they got to get the resources, and then they got to execute to start something. They have to get it started. So that could be starting a project, or that could be getting contracts done and negotiating those. And then you actually have to do the work, right? You have to implement it. So when you start thinking of those, problem, solution, selection, validation, resources, execution, implementation. And when you put yourself in those shoes, sometimes in some problems, one of those is really, really quick. They're also not linear. You can be doing them all at once, or you can be doing one at a time. But you start to see, oh man, we're making these 3 jobs really difficult.
Right.
So what can we do? And if you can take the difficult jobs and make them a lot easier, your win rates are going to go up, your cycle times are going to drastically reduce, and it's just going to pay off in spades.
So if I look at this list, this is really great. Problem, solution, selection, validation, resources or resourcing, execution, and implementation. Trying to make them all shuns, like nouns. Is there a 1 or 2 where companies are the worst at making it complicated?
I was going to ask. I was like, what are the top offenders?
Do we have this research from Gartner, or do you have some anecdotal research for yourself, or even your own opinion? For that matter, we love your opinion. We won't hold you to it, I promise. It's a podcast.
It's only recorded and on the internet for everyone, everywhere, all
we
the
won't
time.
hold you to it. We're just going to publish it on every channel in a small clips that loses all context surrounding it.
No big deal.
That's fine. That's fine.
You don't have to answer, too.
So this is where I'll just jump in with a cop-out. Okay. No, the cop-out is...
He's learning.
It can depend. But the cool thing is, usually within the first 10 minutes of talking to somebody, you can identify, oh, your problem is in 2, 4, and 6.
Yes.
Right? just because you see where they go to.
Yes.
And you start to experience it, and if you start to look right, sometimes you know exactly what your problem is, right?
So
and that's
interesting.
the one I used in the last example. I knew exactly what my problem was, what I needed to solve for, how to implement the thing. I just needed to know what resources did I need to get, and what do I need to do to execute it.
That's great.
Right? And if they just went straight there and said, how do they make that? I could have done the whole thing asynchronously. I did need to ask a few questions, but I may not even need to jump on a call. I could just message through a chat back and forth with somebody if they made that available to me. And I've had other ones where it's like, I have no clue how to solve this problem.
Yeah.
We have this gigantic mess of data, and there's something in here, and it's in 5 different places, and I don't know how to bring it together, and I need a consultant to come in and help me with that.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to articulate my problem internally, right? So you can identify pretty quickly what the problem is, but it can jump around.
Yeah, it's really good.
One thing that like made me giggle too is like we were going through the list, right? Like 1 through 7 about like all these things that need to happen. And then you're like, and then you do the work. Like all the stuff that happens
Just to start.
before you even
true,
do
isn't it?
anything is remarkable. But
Yes.
it's a perfect example of why salespeople oftentimes, why we need to be a part of that process, but make it easy as possible, right? It's not just as simple as self-qualifying all the time. It's astounding the amount of things that go into it before you even get to do the work.
Yeah. And this is what the idea that I love about buyer enablement, right, is the frame of what we just talked about, which is the jobs that the buyer has to do. And then what tools do you have as an organization to solve those problems for them? And we bucket those into 3. There's information you can provide them, right? So there's information and content that they could have. And that can, where does it come from? Where do you put it? How do they get it?
Yep.
There's the interactions that they can have with a human being. And that could be a live interaction. We're sitting here talking to one another, or it could be a quick chat, or it could be a bot, right?
Yep.
What are the interactions? And then the third is the process. Like there is process, like you have to get through. We have got to get a data addendum done because we got to make sure we're both covered for legalese from a security perspective, right? Like there's process stuff that has to happen.
sure.
But you can look and say, all right, I've got information I can provide, I've got interactions I can make available to them, and I've got process we need to get through, and I can make that clear to them, or I can make that opaque to them. But all right, how do I use these 3 things to solve these 7 problems in the best way possible?
really
And when you look at that interaction, fun stuff can happen.
Awesome.
They're fun conversations.
That's cool. Are you actually saying those things? Okay, let's imagine I'm working with somebody and kind of applying this same method, right? Are you using that same language, right? Like, hey, we're gonna take a look at all of this, or is that more internal language that like you and your team and the buyer enablement team is actually using?
No, we'll throw that in the very first conversation. Sometimes before, like they'll just come and say, hey, I just want to explore this idea. And we'll say, all right, here's how we look at it. We've got these 7 jobs, the way we think about it. And we've got these 3 things that you can provide.
Yeah.
Let's just start to catalog. Let's talk about what that experience is like. Let's identify what we think the pain points are. Let's do some validation. Let's talk to some of your buyers and see if we're right. And then let's catalog everything we have. What's all the information you can provide? What exists? What do you wish exist? What does their interaction look like? Okay, it looks like you're just doing live meetings. What about all these other types of things? We got those at our disposal. How would we make those real? And what's the process look like? And how do we make that as clear as possible? Not only what the process is, but why, right?
Great.
And
really great.
Yeah.
I would love to know from your perspective too, like, okay, so different people on a team are going to think about this differently. Like, let's just say from a salesperson's perspective, not necessarily like leadership perspective. This is a whole new reframe for them, right? Like it's a little bit like, oh man, my mind is expanding a little bit. So besides number 1 saying, okay, first we want to put ourselves in the buyer's shoes. That's number 1. Like, what do you feel like the next best steps are for people who are like, because this is even me, I'm feeling like, okay, I'm trying to like intake a lot of information and think about things in a completely new way. So like if you're trying to switch things up more towards a buyer enablement instead of just sales enablement, what do you feel like is like the next best step for them?
There needs to be. We'll look at one of our qualification, right? If we're looking at it from a consulting perspective, is there's got to be somebody who it's their job to do this, and that doesn't mean that you have to completely take somebody and change their job description and like give them a title and a rate. Like, I'm not saying that. But you say, okay, for the next 2 months, this person is going to lead this, and they're going to wake up every morning and go to bed every night looking at it and thinking about it from this frame, because it's the extra is cross-functional. When you look at it this way, it's some marketing, it's some product, it's some sales, it's finance, it's legal. Like there's cross-functional piece there. There has to be one person there who is thinking about that for a period of time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I would say probably owning the metrics around it too, right?
That's right.
It would be what I was going to say sexy. It's sexy because what's cool when you like are putting effort and time and planning into buyer enablement, there is a direct correlation with your dollars, right? With performance immediately. You can see we're making progress or we're not. And so it seems to me that it's a fairly straightforward thing to measure. Would you agree with that?
It is, but in a way that you say, okay, say we cut cycle times in half.
Okay.
It is obvious there's a ton of value associated with that, right?
Yeah.
If you can cut
Yeah.
cycle times in half, it's not a direct, hey, here's there's still a little bit of work you got to do to frame what that ROI is.
Sure.
But there's how do you package that up? Again, it's the same thing. How do we articulate what the problem is we're
Right.
trying to solve? And then how do we get resources internally? Because what we're selling at that point is a project. You need somebody dedicated to this. Here's the ROI you're going to get. You're going to see win rates do this. I mean, you're going to see cycle times cut in half.
Yes.
And if so, like, let's dig into this together and let's see, do we need to solve it with software? Do we need to solve it with process? Do we need to solve it with something else?
So good.
Cool.
So good. So what is Philo doing specifically that people can go check out,
Yeah.
look at, experience, all those sorts of things
Yeah,
to fix
thanks.
this problem?
Thanks for asking.
Anytime.
To put that softball right up there on that tee. It makes it easy. I appreciate
Not
it.
my first interview.
Yeah, so two pieces. One, we do have a software piece, right? And what we're looking at is how do we make that experience how do we make the experience as easy on the buyer as possible?
Yep.
We do believe that human interaction adds a lot of value to it. So our software powers deal rooms, and we're working with our customers to say, what should that look like? And when somebody requests a demo or reaches out, should we create a private space that can be personalized to them, that brings in the right content, that they can have different types of interaction? So we'll solve that on the software side. And then the other side is on the services. Some of them just come and say, man, I really want to explore this, right? I want to explore it. This is super interesting. We're seeing our sales cycle. I was talking with somebody last week who said, man, our sales cycles in the last 2 months have gone from an average of 28 days, which is really quick.
Yeah.
It was 28 days. They've now gone to 64 days in the last 2 months.
Wow.
And the chaos that's created
totally.
internally because their
Yes.
entire sales team was geared
Yes.
on this super
Yes.
fast sales cycle. And now it's not, and people are missing quotas. And so I just want to, what's going on here? How do we look at it from this different frame? And we'll say, great, we have a framework to do that. Let's jump in and figure it out. And if that ends up being working with us as a project and then it becomes a different solution, we'll help point you in that direction. If it's in our solution, then that would be great too.
Yes, I think it's so great to have other people thinking on behalf of you.
Oh, totally.
It's worth every dime. And I know it's what I do for a living, but even without that, we pay consultants all the time because I just think there's no better value than having another person's brain and perspective and fresh eyes.
That
looking on
outside
a problem.
perspective,
It's
because
great,
you're
isn't it?
in it all the
I know, you
time,
can't
right?
see it.
And
Yeah.
you absolutely can't see it. So I'm always like asking people like my mom or someone like my friend or whatever to be
Yeah.
like, hey, if you read this, would you know what I do? Like,
Yeah.
or like, what am I trying to
Right,
describe?
yeah.
I know exactly what I'm trying to
So
say.
true,
All
isn't
of
it?
my colleagues
So
do.
true.
But when I ask someone who has no context, like I need them to have very little context, which is super helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, well, we love what you're doing at Philo, and I will
Yeah.
say this too: this is the beginning of a huge problem that's getting worse, and you kind of ended on that, but especially in the technology sector, we see these companies who've just flat out been riding a wave for 12 years,
Totally.
Yep.
and no one's as good as their numbers have said. Nobody, us included.
Yep.
We've ridden the wave, and all of a sudden it's getting real.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a good friend of mine, a guy named Todd Capone. He's just such a fantastic
I
guy.
just put a stuff. Did you see that yesterday?
No.
I just reposted that.
Was this? I was going to
What?
say, he has this thing he's on now. He's like the peak of Mount
Peak amount.
Stupid.
I literally
What?
look on my LinkedIn yesterday. I
it's
did
so
a whole
good.
big post about it, and I'm like, "Let's go."
Okay, well,
Todd.
clue me in. What is it?
I was talking to him last
So
last
great.
week, and he
I
was
love
like,
Todd.
"You know what? You go through when you're going through really, really good times, and you just think you're a genius. Like I've been all this figured out, and you're right. But what you're really doing is you're sitting at a window and a drive-through, and people are just coming through and placing orders. And then when things get hard and things get worse, then all of a sudden you realize, oh no, I haven't figured it out. I'm on this peak of Mount Stupid. I think I'm so
is.
good that
Peak
I'm
of
not
Mount
even seeing
Stupid is
things.
so good.
And then there's this crash,
Yeah.
right? And I forgot all the different steps. He's so good.
You
Check
go
it
to
out.
The Valley of
Go-
Despair.
Uh,
The Valley
So
of
good.
Despair, and then
Yeah.
you start to grow out of that, and then this plateau of consistency over time. But I actually wrote in my repost of his. I think that cycle actually repeats over life.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
The way it's built,
Yep.
it sort of like ends. I'm like, I think it just goes again, just at a different level in a different length of time.
That's awesome.
If these people have been on or what do you call it, Mount Stupid
Yeah,
for
yeah.
12 years.
That's right.
Not knowing how tough it can be. and it's happening.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You know, so-
And that's that. I mean, what we're advocating for is just the idea of buyer enablement, right?
Yeah.
Like we need to look at it from a different
Yes.
frame. And if we do, all of us are going to ride that wave again, right? If we can just come at it from a different frame and we can solve some of these problems, we can start to dig ourselves out of this
Yes.
pit that we're in.
Yes.
So if you want to learn more about how we think about it, there's a page, philo.co/unscripted that we're going to put up. Has some stuff on buyer
Nice.
enablement.
Let's go. Co-branding.
Has some stuff about our software, about
Love it.
services. If you just want to talk to us and banter back and forth, that's fine too. I love conversations, so, so reach out.
That'd be awesome. Love what you're doing, man. Thanks for coming in and talking to us on Sales Unscripted. It's been fantastic.
And for being our very first guest.
Our very
This
first
was
guest
so
for the rest of
fun.
life.
These guys are going to be like, as soon as this mic goes up, we're never doing that.
True.
We let this guy, we're not. That was
Are you kidding me? It
awful.
made my job so easy. I hardly talked at all.
and because I live with a Purdue grad and they lost to a 16 seed, a 1 seed,
Son of a-
you can wear your Purdue stuff all you want. IU people we
Asshole.
earned the next 100 years of smack talk, no matter what happens after this.
Oh, you
the
would
worst
bring
thing.
that up at the end.
I'm sorry.
It's a disease because
It's
now I'm excited
brutal.
for next year again. Like
yes.
it's like I got to get my fix,
awesome.
but that's all right.
That's awesome. Thanks for
That's it.
joining us, Matt. We
Thanks so much
appreciate
for
it.
having me.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.
See ya.